Tomorrow marks 2 weeks since Thanksgiving, and health officials say the holiday is one of the reasons for the spike in COVID cases and hospitalizations that are happening now in Georgia. Currently, numbers for new cases, patients in the hospital, percentage of people testing positive, and the number of deaths are all trending upward. Joe Henke gives us a closer look at how the numbers compare to the records set this past summer.
Hospitals in Atlanta and around Georgia are seeing an increased number of people being admitted for COVID-19. And the worry is if those numbers continue to trend upward, people gathering for holiday celebrations later this month will only add to the problem. Currently, people are testing positive for COVID-19 more frequently than they did in the days leading up to and immediately after Thanksgiving. During the last 7 days of November, 9% of Georgians tested received a positive test result. During the first week of December, the test positivity rate jumped 30%, with 12% of Georgians tested now receiving a positive result. Another concerning trend is hospitalizations. In a Grady Health Systems newsletter today, CEO John Hopper wrote they are rising to a level that will soon jeopardize our collective ability to care for patients with other serious illnesses. We are facing a COVID wave that was already underway and now intensified by the post-Thanksgiving cases we knew would come. We are bracing for the worst, as the holiday-related case numbers are not expected to peak for several more days. Hopper added he is concerned if people don't stay home for Christmas and New Year's, they will spend even more time outside of their bubble and traveling, and even more cases will be added on top of the current spike. The number of people hospitalized is still 22% below a daily high set back in July, when 3,200 Georgians were hospitalized with the virus. But in the past week, hospitalization numbers have quickly increased 13%. And another number that we are unfortunately having to keep an eye on is the number of people dying per day from COVID-19. Now, back in August, that is when the most people per day were dying from the virus. We're still well below the record levels set back then, but things are trending upward, and usually deaths do lag behind spikes like we are seeing right now in hospitalizations.